High in the Indian Himalayas, surrounded by jagged peaks and swirling mist, lies Rupkund Lake, a small, frozen body of water, hiding an eerie secret. Imagine trekking through these desolate mountains at dawn, the chill biting at your skin, the silence broken only by the crunch of snow beneath your boots. As you near the lake's edge, something stops you. Beneath the clear, icy surface, bones, human skulls, skeletons, dozens of them, perfectly preserved in the frozen water. But this isn't the site of a single tragedy. These remains come from different eras, some separated by hundreds or even thousands of years. It's as if the lake has quietly collected lives over the ages, only to expose them later like a whispered secret from the past. First discovered by a forest ranger in 1942, Rupkund, now known as Skeleton Lake, has become a chilling mystery that continues to captivate scientists, historians, and adventurers alike. The more we learn, the stranger it gets. DNA tests have revealed that the people who died here weren't from one group or one time. Some came from nearby regions of South Asia. Others from as far away as the Mediterranean. And yet, despite decades of research, one question refuses to go away. Why were all these people in such a remote, inhospitable place? And why didn't any of them leave? Tonight, we'll dive into the mystery of Rupkund Lake. We'll explore the science, the leading theories, and the eerie patterns that defy explanation. A frozen lake that seems to lure people across time and continents, only to keep their secrets locked in ice. So settle in, dim the lights if you'd like, and join us as we explore Rupkund Lake, a place where the landscape is silent, but the dead still speak. The discovery of skeleton. Lake Rupkund Lake sits over 16,000 feet above sea level. In India's Uttarakhand region, tucked away in the Himalayas, it's a small lake, just 40 meters across, and no more than 10 feet deep. But getting there is no easy feat. Reaching the lake requires a grueling 5-day trek through thick forests, steep rocky climbs, alpine meadows, and dizzying heights. Most of the year, the lake is frozen solid, thawing only briefly during warmer months, just long enough to reveal the bones beneath. Survival here is tough. The environment is harsh and unforgiving. Bitter cold, brutal winds, sudden storms, and dangerously thin air make the area deadly for the unprepared. Vegetation is scarce. Just a few tough grasses, low shrubs, and wildflowers that can survive in the high-altitude air. The wildlife is just as selective, with only well-adapted animals like the elusive snow leopard calling this place home. Hostile heights and a hidden discovery life clings to the edges around Rupkund Lake. Only the hardiest creatures survive here. Himalayan, tahr, musk deer, high-altitude birds, each adapted to the unforgiving cold. These brutal conditions are why, for centuries, Rupkund was seen as both deadly and sacred. Local shepherds had long known of the lake's existence, but they spoke of it in hushed tones. They warned each other not to go near it. The lake, they believed, was not meant to be disturbed. To the rest of the world, though, Rupkund remained a secret. That changed in 1942. Hari Kishan Madhwal, a British forest ranger assigned to these rugged mountain slopes, was charting the Himalayan terrain when he came upon something strange near a remote glacial lake. As he moved closer to the shoreline, he spotted pale, unnatural shapes scattered among the rocks. They caught the morning light in a way that made his stomach twist. Stepping forward, he realized what he was looking at. Bones. Human bones. Skulls. Ribs, leg bones, arms, even jaw bones, partially submerged in the icy shallows or lying openly along the shoreline. At first, Madhwal assumed it was a recent tragedy. Perhaps pilgrims caught in a deadly storm, or travelers who had perished in the unforgiving terrain. But the bones told another story. Weathered, bleached, and cracked by time, they had clearly been there for many years, exposed to countless Himalayan winters. his discovery sparked international attention. Researchers, archaeologists, and curious adventurers soon made the journey to this mysterious lake to see for themselves. What they found was beyond anyone's expectations. Not just a handful of remains, but hundreds, scattered along the lake's edges and resting beneath its clear, frigid waters. Men, women, children. All of them seemingly struck down at once, with no weapons, no clothing, and no possessions to explain who they were or what had happened. With no easy answers, the world gave the site a haunting name: Skeleton Lake. Initial speculation in the 1950s even suggested that these could be Japanese soldiers who had perished while crossing the Himalayas during World War II. But this theory didn't hold up. The bones were far too old. The mystery only deepened. Despite decades of digging, sampling, and studying, one thing remained clear. Rupkund wasn't giving up its secrets easily. Haunting legends of the lost travelers. To understand what may have happened at Rupkund, science offers one path. But for those who live in the shadow of the Himalayas, the story begins elsewhere, in legend. Long before the first scientist arrived, local villagers had passed down tales about the strange lake and the bones it held. One of the oldest stories centers around a king named Jastaval. According to local lore, King Jastaval once set out on a grand pilgrimage into the mountains. He was accompanied by his pregnant queen, a full royal entourage of soldiers, musicians, dancers, and servants. Their goal? To reach the sacred shrine of Nanda Devi, a revered mountain goddess, and seek her blessings for the unborn child. But something about the king's procession, its extravagance, its music, its pride, offended the goddess. Some versions of the tale say it was the queen's presence that broke sacred custom. A pregnant woman, it was believed, should not approach the holy shrine. Whatever the reason, the goddess was not pleased, and so, the story goes, she struck down the travelers with divine fury, summoning a sudden, violent hailstorm from the sky. Hailstones, massive and fast, rained down upon the group, killing them where they stood. Their bodies, untouched by time, were left to rest in the cold embrace of the lake. Struck down by the sky, the legend of King Jastaval ends in a storm of divine fury. As the tale goes, hailstones the size of cricket balls rained from the sky, pounding down on the king, his queen, and their entire entourage. In the exposed highlands around Rupkund, there was no shelter, no trees, no caves, nowhere to run. They were trapped. None of them survived. But the king's doomed procession isn't the only legend tied to this remote lake. For centuries, Rupkund has played a quiet role in one of the region's most sacred pilgrimages, a journey to the shrine of Nanda Devi, the mountain goddess. Every year, villagers and pilgrims brave steep mountain trails, treacherous weather, and high-altitude passes to reach her shrine in the clouds. It's a test of faith, endurance, and respect. Those who complete the journey are believed to receive the goddess's protection. But not everyone returns. Over the generations, stories grew. Stories of pilgrims who vanished without a trace. Stories of those who took the wrong path, ignored local customs, or showed the slightest hint of disrespect. For many in the region, there was no doubt. The bones at Rupkund belonged to these lost souls, pilgrims punished by divine wrath. The lake soon gained a chilling reputation, not just as a dangerous place, but as one that demanded reverence. A sacred warning, frozen in time. For decades, these local legends were the most accepted explanation for the mystery of Skeleton Lake. But then, science arrived, and the story began to shift. When science peels back the ice, when scientists first began examining the lake in detail, they too assumed the skeletons were victims of a single tragic event, perhaps a group of pilgrims caught in a deadly storm, much like the legend described. It made sense, at least on the surface. But deeper investigation shattered that simple theory. According to National Geographic, between 500 and 800 individual skeletons have been identified around Rupkund Lake, and the real number could be much higher. Many remains are likely still hidden beneath loose rock, buried by landslides or lost to erosion and time. Some may have been disturbed or removed by curious visitors over the years. That staggering number pointed to something far stranger. This was not one disaster. It was many. Different groups of people, from different periods, all meeting the same fate in the same remote place. The first wave of serious scientific analysis began in the early 2000s, when DNA testing was still in its infancy. Those initial results supported the original assumption. The skeletons seemed to belong to South Asians, who had died around the year 800 AD. A tragic accident, perhaps. Maybe the ice had given way beneath them, plunging the group into freezing waters. The skeletal evidence showed a diverse mix: men, women, even children. Most were young adults between the ages of 18 and 35. It was a clean and tidy explanation, but it wouldn't hold for long. As the technology improved and more skeletons were tested, something emerged that no one expected. Science cracks the ice and unleashes more questions. In 2019, a team of geneticists, archaeologists, and historians, hailing from institutions like Harvard University, the Birbal Sani Institute in India, and genetic labs in Hyderabad, returned to Rupkund Lake. Armed with the latest advances in DNA sequencing and radiocarbon dating, their mission was simple: solve the mystery once and for all. But the answers they uncovered only deepened the enigma. Their research focused on 38 skeletal remains, carefully selected for analysis. At first glance, one might expect these bones to belong to a single unfortunate group caught in a storm. But testing revealed a startling truth. The skeletons didn't come from the same era, not even close. They came from multiple time periods, separated by as much as 1,000 years. Of the 38 individuals, 23 had South Asian ancestry. But even they weren't from the same time. Some dated as far back as the 7th and 8th centuries. Others from the 10th century. This discovery shattered the tidy theory of a single tragedy. Instead, it painted a far stranger picture. Rupkund had claimed victims again and again. Then came the real surprise. 14 of the skeletons had clear genetic links to the Eastern Mediterranean, specifically the island of Crete. These individuals had died sometime between the 17th and 18th centuries. There are no known historical records, none, that explain why people from the shores of the Mediterranean would be trekking through the Indian Himalayas. The idea alone seemed impossible. Yet the DNA was irrefutable. Even more baffling, some skeletal evidence pointed to individuals with Southeast Asian ancestry. Whatever was happening at Rupkund Lake, it wasn't local. It was global. How had people from such distant places, separated by centuries and continents, all ended up at this one small lake, thousands of feet above sea level, in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth? No one knows for sure. To investigate further, researchers dug deeper, literally. Archaeologists examined the soil and surrounding area, looking for evidence of settlements, pathways, or ritual activity. Geneticists ran dozens of cross-analyses. The findings only grew more tangled. A few theories began to take shape. Theories. And Shadow's one popular theory is that Rupkund may have been a pilgrimage site for more than 1,000 years. The Himalayas are home to countless shrines and sacred trails, many of which remain obscure even today. Perhaps Rupkund, too, was once revered. A destination for the faithful, willing to risk everything to reach the edge of the divine. Another theory suggests trade. Ancient routes once connected India to Tibet, China, and Central Asia, and traders could have ventured through these mountains, possibly straying off course due to weather, illness, or misfortune. But none of these theories fully explain the diversity of the dead, and the injuries on the bones. They raise even more questions. Many skeletons bore evidence of blunt force trauma, consistent with large hailstones striking the skull. That supports the old folklore, death from the sky. Others, however, had fractures and damage more in line, with avalanches, rockfalls, or accidental slips on steep terrain. Some bones showed no trauma at all, suggesting death from exposure, illness, or possibly even altitude sickness. To complicate things further, almost no personal belongings were found. Just fragments, bits of bamboo parasols, wooden walking sticks, slippers, seashell earrings, no coins, no weapons, no major trade goods or religious artifacts. It appears that these travelers were caught unprepared, overtaken by sudden, lethal conditions. Taken together, the scientific evidence paints a picture of multiple tragedies, involving people from vastly different backgrounds and times, all converging in one place only to meet the same fate. But one question lingers. Why? What drew these people here? What made them risk the climb? And why didn't they survive it? Theories multiply, but the mystery remains. At this altitude, death doesn't knock. It simply arrives. Rupkund Lake sits at over 16,000 feet, a place where oxygen thins and the wind cuts through skin like glass. Up here, a sudden drop in temperature, a whiteout snowstorm, or freezing rain can mean the difference between survival and vanishing. Without shelter, without fire, without warning, people die fast. Hypothermia steals warmth, then clarity, then breath. That explains how they died. But not why they were here to begin with. Why did dozens, maybe hundreds, of travelers, over the span of 1,000 years, risk this brutal ascent? And why do the dead come from so many different corners of the world? One of the most surprising theories emerged from recent genetic data, a possible link to Alexander the Great. In 326 BCE, Alexander's army reached the fringes of northern India. He was searching for new routes, new conquests, and sent scouts deep into uncharted mountain passes. Some historians speculate that these scouting parties, cut off from the main army, lost in a frozen wilderness, may have died here. The Mediterranean. DNA found among some of the skeletons could support this theory. But there's a problem. There's no direct archaeological evidence, no weapons, armor, or Greek inscriptions to confirm this theory. It's a tantalizing idea, but right now, it remains pure speculation. Another, far darker theory has been whispered in academic circles: ritual sacrifice. The area around Rupkund lies close to ancient pilgrimage routes, including the trail to the shrine of Nanda Devi, a mountain goddess associated with divine wrath and protection. Could some of these individuals have come here to die, willingly? History offers precedent. Cultures across the world have practiced ritual death, whether self-sacrifice, group offerings, or ceremonial acts meant to appease angry gods. The lack of personal items at the lake, the near absence of jewelry, tools, or valuable artifacts, has led some to wonder, were these travelers stripped of belongings? Or did they never intend to return? It's impossible to say for certain. Still others point to a more modern biological explanation: poisoned water. If the lake had once been tainted by bacteria, cholera, or toxic algae blooms, a group of weary travelers might have consumed contaminated water, falling ill and dying rapidly, with no outward signs of trauma. A quiet, invisible killer. But testing today shows no toxins in Rupkund's waters, making this theory difficult to prove or dismiss. Then there's the avalanche theory. Some researchers once suggested the bodies may have fallen into the lake from even higher up, carried by snow and ice from above. Maybe they weren't gathered here. Maybe they were deposited. But there's a fatal flaw in that idea. The skeletons are too intact, too clean. They weren't shattered by violent tumbling down steep cliffs. They weren't scattered as avalanche debris often is. They died here, where they were found. Not above, not below. Here. 1,000 years of unanswered questions. So where does that leave us? At the edge of a frozen lake, surrounded by shattered skulls and unanswered questions. Most researchers today believe no single explanation fits. Rupkund was likely the site of multiple tragedies, unfolding over centuries. Some deaths may have come from deadly hailstorms, just as the local legends warned. Others fell to hypothermia, avalanches, or sickness. A few may have come seeking something greater than themselves, a sacred death. And maybe, just maybe, some were explorers, soldiers, or lost travelers, caught far from home in a place that would become their grave. Rupkund Lake remains one of the most haunting archaeological mysteries on Earth. It's not just a mass grave, it's a crossroads of history, myth, and mortality. A place where science meets silence, and where the dead still whisper beneath the ice. New dangers at death's doorstep. The enemies of Rupkund Lake aren't just ancient storms or forgotten curses anymore. Today, modern threats are eating away at this sacred, haunted place, bit by bit. After centuries of isolation, Rupkund has been rediscovered, not by pilgrims or explorers, but by tourists with smartphones and casual curiosity. Word of Skeleton Lake has spread, drawing adventurers hungry for strange selfies and souvenir horror. The result? Foot traffic is eroding the narrow mountain trails. Human presence is scarring the once pristine environment. And the bones? They're vanishing. Some visitors pick up fragments and take them home, macabre trophies that strip the lake of its history and leave archaeologists with nothing but missing pieces. Others, with less malice but equal ignorance, rearrange skeletons for photos or move them from their resting places, destroying genetic and contextual evidence that scientists can never recover. But it gets worse. Climate change is accelerating the destruction. As Himalayan temperatures rise, the protective ice and snow that has shielded these bones for centuries is melting. Every year, more skeletons are revealed. Every year, they deteriorate faster. Without the icy cloak of preservation, bones crack, decay, and crumble beneath the weight of exposure and time. What was once frozen silence is now a race against the thaw. These pressures raise an uncomfortable question. Are we honoring the dead or exploiting them? These remains aren't relics. They're people. Men and women who died here. Some violently, some lost, some perhaps even willingly. Scientists, tourists, governments. We all have to reckon with what it means to study, photograph, or walk among the dead. Where do we draw the line between discovery and desecration? That question hangs in the thin mountain air, unanswered. To preserve what remains of Rupkund Lake, both its history and its haunting dignity, experts are calling for stronger protections. Conservationists, archaeologists, and local communities urge stricter regulations, ethical oversight, and international cooperation to keep this fragile site intact. Without it, we risk losing more than data. We risk erasing the final chapter of lives already lost to time. Because in the end, preserving Rupkund Lake isn't just about bones or riddles or solving a mystery. It's about respect. Respect for those who died here, for reasons we may never fully understand, and respect for the silence that still lingers in the wind, where the mountains remember, even if we forget. The final mysteries of Skeleton Lake. Despite decades of digging, scientific and literal, Rupkund Lake still keeps its secrets. Some researchers believe the lake once held deep spiritual or cultural, meaning that we've simply lost over time. Maybe it was a sacred healing site, a place the sick and desperate were drawn to, chasing some legend of cure or rebirth. If true, it could explain why so many remains show no signs of weapons, wealth, or worldly baggage. These weren't warriors. They were pilgrims on their final journey. And as the ice continues to melt, more of them are being revealed. Modern tech. is now catching up to the mystery. Chemical residue in bones that tells us what they ate, DNA that maps where they came from, and radar that can scan deep beneath the soil. Piece by piece, we're slowly assembling the story. Or stories. Were these people lost? Devout? Sacrificial? Or something else? Of course, where science meets shadows, imagination rushes in. Some point to reports of strange lights in the sky, mysterious energy fields in the region, even whispers of ancient contact, UFOs, forgotten civilizations, and paranormal events. No proof, no hard data, but in a place like this, where the dead are frozen in time, it's hard not to wonder. Meanwhile, local communities live in the lake's cold shadow, holding on to stories older than science. To them, Rupkund isn't a riddle to be solved. It's a place to be respected, a place of memory, of warning. Elders teach the young to walk softly, to not touch the bones, to remember that these were people, real people, whose last moments were spent here under storm, snow, or silence. And yet, even with all we now know, the question remains. Why here? Why this lake? Why did people from Europe, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, separated by oceans, centuries, and cultures, all end up at the same icy grave? Maybe we'll never get one clear answer. Maybe the truth, like the lake itself, is layered in ice, time, and tragedy. Or maybe we're just one discovery away from unlocking it all. Your turn. So now we want to hear from you. What's your theory? Was it a sacred pilgrimage site? A cursed passage? An ancient tragedy that repeated itself again and again? Or do you have your own idea? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. And if you enjoyed falling into the mystery with us today, hit that like button. It really does help more people find this channel. And hey, subscribe so you don't miss what we uncover next. Thanks for watching. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and maybe stay out of the mountains.